Alright everyone, here's a little bit of a heads up. Apparently there is going to be a New York Times stink piece with regards to the Substack kerfuffle that's been going on. Of course, Substack saying that they're going to block, or not block, but demote Russian propaganda, content that's disinformation, and people reacting to that naturally by saying, hey, you said you were going to be a non-biased search engine, and we're leaving you. We're using other sources. There is going to be a piece, apparently by Stuart Thompson. He works for the New York Times. Now, normally, under normal circumstances, if someone comes to me and DMs me, I don't screen cap it. I don't do anything with it out of principle because I believe in privacy. But he's working for the New York Times. He came to me, and so I'm going to read out a little bit of that. I posted it on Twitter, and I'll read it out for you here. Hey Tarl, I was hoping we could connect quickly about Duckduckgo for the article I'm writing about their decision to downrank content. Can you get in touch? Here or, and he gave his email, of course that's redacted, I'm not going to give that out. Thanks. I replied, sure, ask away. I usually use Twitter for connecting, and that's true. I prefer not to use email because it's effectively the modern day snail mail. Okay, great, thanks. Well, I'm just writing about Duckduckgo's decision. I watched your video and plan to include a quote from that, which focuses on you suggesting people stop using it and switch to something else, and that you want tens of thousands of people to stop using it. Fact check, true. I wish that everyone would stop using Duckduckgo out of principle, because I do not believe in censorship. We'll get into this further in the conversation, though. And just wanted to, A, see if you have anything to add to that, or about any other context you think is worth noting about why you feel this way. And B, if I could just confirm your name and title. Is it fair to say you're a conservative YouTuber? I know you have many interests and activities, but trying to simplify for our readers in a fair way. And your full name is Tarl Warwick or something else. And I replied, of course, A, I oppose censorship. Free speech should be absolute. Morons are using the Russia narrative as a reason to censor people the same way this crap was used after 9/11 in the name of patriotism, defending democracy, etc. B, no, I'm not a conservative. I believe in winning. Also, fact check true. Conservatives like to lose with grace, and then they bow their heads solemnly, and I've gone into that before. And yes, I am Tarl Warwick. Lol. Of course, you know that I'm not a Zoomer, because I use the term lol. Yes, by the way, my name is actually Tarl Warwick. There are some people who still think that that's a pen name. It actually isn't. Okay, great. Just trying to capture the title in a way readers can understand quickly. I get this side of winning thing. But you have called yourself on the fringe of the alt-right. Would you identify with other labels people would understand? Now, this is where I knew that something was desperately wrong, beyond working for the New York Times. By the way, Stuart, actually, I did look at your profile. I'm aware that you're a leftist or liberal or whatever. I'm not expecting the article to be fair. That was a foregone conclusion, which is the only reason that I engaged with you. As far as being on the fringe of the alt-right, I tried to explain. I am a libertarian. I was on the fringe of the alt-right in the sense of the alt-right fighting censorship, which it no longer does. Now the former leaders of the alt-right sound like Bernie Sanders to me. This is also true. The reason that I said that, and this was, I think fucking 6 or 7 years ago, the alt-right was on the cusp of fighting censorship. They didn't want to be censored. Now, they were doing it for self-serving purposes. I do it for general purposes. I simply don't like censorship. If that means siding with people that are labeled Nazis, Nazis that don't want to burn books, so be it. 10 years prior to that, I would have been a liberal. And was, actually. And was labeled such. I was called a pinko, a commie, years ago, because I didn't think that people should be censored for opposing the Iraq War and things like that. The idea of this establishment narrative being, of course, the end-all be-all of truth, I oppose. I think people should speak their minds. I don't care if they're Americans, Russians, Europeans. I don't care if they're from Zimbabwe. I think people should be able to speak their mind. That's the purpose of the internet. That's the whole point. I have a feeling, and this is just a guess, just a guess here, considering this is a New York Times article, that will be lost in translation. See, here's the problem. I have been a frequent critic of the New York Times, many, many times. It's funny, because if we go to Stuart Thompson's page here, you'll find that there's actually another tabloid that he worked for, another legacy media group that actually defamed me already. New York Times link here. Stuart A. Thompson. Stuart A. Thompson is a reporter in the technology department covering misinformation and disinformation. Before joining the newsroom, Mr. Thompson was the head of Opinion's visual journalism department, focusing on telling stories in new ways using data and visuals. The New York Times could use some help in that department. Just saying they should probably up his pay grade. Previously, he worked as the graphics director at the Wall Street Journal, where he was part of a large team that won the Pulitzer Prize for the series Medicare Unmasked. In 2018, he was on the team of Pulitzer Prize finalists for a series on domestic gun violence called The Home Front. Now, very interesting, the Wall Street Journal already name-dropped me alongside Alex Jones and, I can't remember, I do apologize, a third individual who I remember did a lot of things with regards to solar flares and seismic data and was kind of an end times Christian. I can't remember exactly who it was at the time. But anyway, he got banned. I think got a new account. I won't name drop him partially because he would get banned again. Alex Jones, of course, he's kaput on mainline tech. So you can and domestic gun violence, the home front. I'm going to assume that this is about how the availability of guns is a bad thing. We'll go through a couple of his articles here, though, because a couple of them are quite telling. On February 25th. You got "I'll stand on the side of Russia. Pro-Putin sentiment spreads online." After marinating in conspiracy theories about Donald J. Trump's Russia stance, his stance that Putin had outmatched Biden, which he clearly did, some online discourse about Vladimir Putin has grown more complimentary. I'm wondering where, but, again, the New York Times audience is not going to fact check by going to 4chan or Reddit or something like that. These are 60-year-old soccer moms and shit. On February 23rd, and this is pertinent because this deals with Duckduckgo. This was the subject of what he was asking me. Fed up with Google, conspiracy theorists turned to Duckduckgo. The embrace by some conservative influencers and conspiracy theorists is part of a broader effort to shift people away from big tech. Now, apparently the idea is that people flocked to Duckduckgo, and Duckduckgo, they had principles. They decided they wanted to stop disinformation and stop the evil Russians, because, killing a bunch of Ukrainian babies and women and stuff, bombing maternity wards, so now Duckduckgo good, which is very funny, because I remember for years Duckduckgo bad was the line that was fed to everyone. In my opinion, Duckduckgo bad simply because they have violated their mission statement, and this will probably be lost in the article, which is that Duckduckgo did not just cast itself off as we're pro-privacy. That's fine, that's wonderful, you're not tracking people. They also cast themselves off as we're going to be unbiased. I remember there was a 2019 post by their official Twitter page talking about effectively not wanting to editorialize anything. Google editorializes, their algorithms are screwy, and we're trying to fix that. That was a big selling point for Duckduckgo. Will this be mentioned in Stuart Thompson's New York Times stink piece article? Maybe. Maybe in passing. The idea is that you should probably be using Brave or Startpage or Ecosia at this point. I mentioned Yandex, by the way. I have a feeling that will probably be mentioned here, probably out of context. That's because Yandex, at least in terms of the mud disinfo thing, it's not editorializing content because it's a Russian search engine. That's the whole point. So yeah. And then we'll go to his main page on Twitter. Reporter at the New York Times, now covering disinformation in the Ukraine-Russia war. Now, most of the things here are lukewarm, they're regular liberal things. I did find this funny if I look at who follows his account. Guess who follows Stuart Thompson? And he'll be totally unbiased in his coverage of me. And I'm used to this horse shit. I'm used to this fucking horseshit from the legacy media. It's happened before. Wall Street Journal, Gizmodo, others have talked about me and said things about me that aren't true. Followed by Representative Eric Swalwell and Joy-Ann Pro-Democracy Reid. Yeah, Joy Reid is really unbiased there. By the way, is MSNBC not a competitor to the New York Times in the tech arena? Why are you bosom buddies? I bet it's more than following. I bet there's some concordance there. Representative Eric Swalwell, you mean Bang Bang Fang Fang? The dude that was fucking a Russian spy at some point? Yeah, what a non-biased individual. If you go down through his material, he's got a fixation with DuckDuckGo. Some of this stuff actually is true, though. The fact that DuckDuckGone is trending shows that the audience who use DuckDuckGo to avoid Google censorship is larger than I imagined. Well, yeah, that was basically the entire audience. Again, I remember when DuckDuckGo was being memed years ago, and I used them briefly, but I didn't like the search results, so I mainly defaulted to start page. I've used Bing. I've used Yandex some. Sometimes I just use Google, and my point was, of course, if you're going to use DuckDuckGo, at this point, you might as well just use Google unless you give a shit about being tracked everywhere, which, let's face it, the average soccer mom does not give a shit about. The whole point is that DuckDuckGo was branded as unbiased. That was the entire point. Not new tech, but we're unbiased tech after a fashion. Well, if you're not that, then you're nothing. Nobody cares about you. Few Tucker posts, of course. Dang Bongino. And by the way, I'll read this one out. This is a handy way to advance conspiracies, as attempts to share the truth are seen as evidence of yet another conspiracy. He even mentions that Snopes jumped on the bioweapons story, suggesting it was planted, but pre-bunking has been an effective fact-checking strategy. This is Dan Bongino here, getting fact-checked by the USA Today. Fact check. False claim of U.S. biolabs in Ukraine tied to Russian disinformation campaign. Yes, indeed, there are biolabs in the Ukraine. I don't know why the U.S. decided to put them there. They're not apparently weapons related, but it's like, you're going to do vaccine research. Okay, you put it 100 miles away from the Russian border. Nothing could possibly go wrong here. I think that's another oversight as opposed to a conspiracy myself, but he's got a thing for Bongino here. Multiple posts. A little bit about inflation, actually. He's right about that. But anyway, I just figured that I would tell people ahead of time. Yes, indeed, there will be a hit piece, supposedly, from the New York Times, and yours truly will be name dropped. So to be clear, I've disclosed my conversations with this individual. That's number one. Again, I wouldn't do that if this were a private individual. This is a legacy media so-called journalist. Number two, I wish Stuart well. You should probably get a Substack article because the New York Times, 10 years from now, will it even exist? I don't know that it will. And number three, of course, the idea is that he's bringing up interesting linguistic terms there that show that it's not exactly going to be a fair article. If it is, I'll be very, very intrigued by that. I'd be interested in seeing the final article. I'll probably do a video on it at the time. It'd be very interesting. That's about all. Peace out.